The High Elf magician stood in the battle circle, watching his foe enter the arena. He saw a human of middling height, slightly leaning forward as if bored of everything. His hands were shoved into the pockets of a long tattered and stained overcoat, its designs long since frayed and covered with grime. In contrast, the High Elf stood tall and proud. His robes were fresh and covered with motifs, designed to enhance his power and control. Rich colours and gems shone brightly in the midday sun. "Let's get this over with then," the human said in a dull voice. "That way I can go back to doing what I was doing."
"You insolent fool! Do you not know who I am?" the elf all but growled. "I am the High Magician, Lord Fanforian the 13th, magician to the High King Oberon, slayer of the Dark Dragon Leviathan, master of the 13 Seals, and I will destroy you for your trespass against me, and I will make your daughter my bedchamber slave."
The human straightened up. "You really are dumb, aren't you?" he asked. "Why should I give you, a failure of an elf who is unable to get it up with his own kind, whose member is considered to be so small as to be all but invisible, one who claims to have mastered all 13 seals but cannot master the bedchamber? Why should I give a failure like you my daughter?" The elf laughed cruelly. "You dare mock me, human? I can take whoever I want, and I want your daughter. My power is the second highest in the kingdom, behind the king, and all who have defied me have perished. I make your daughter my slave, and then when she is pregnant, I will throw her onto the streets, where a low-born, worthless piece of trash like her belongs." The human smiled. "You are weak, old man. You are all bark and no bite. You stand there and hurl insults, but nothing else, as you have nothing else. You may as well go home and play with yourself. That's all you are good for." "You think you can stand against me, human?" the elf snickered. "Look at our power differences. I am the master of the 13 seals, and you can barely light a candle. I will be plowing your daughter before the evening meal." The human shoved his hands deeper into his coat pockets. "Let me give you some advice, O High Elf," the human said mockingly. "Your magic can be like your penis. You can flash it around and let everyone know how great it is. But if you don't know how to use it, then you will die a virgin. And you, my good sir, not only is your penis so small as to be mistaken for a worm, but like your magic you have no idea how to use it." The High Elf threw up his right hand and called forth 13 fireballs. "You will die, human," he said, before bringing his arm down and pointing at his foe across the circle. The human pulled his hands out of the pockets of his coat and made a series of small flicking motions with his fingers. Each fireball moved ever so slightly and passed by the human harmlessly. "You dare mock me with minor wind magics?" the elf shouted. "Then deal with this." He stretched his arms forth and conjured up a series of rocks, each one popping into existence in a flash of coloured light. "As I said, flashy," the human said, before once more flicking his fingers towards the elf. The elf hastily erected a simple shield, expecting the human to have launched some sort of wind attack. Darkness suddenly covered the elf's eyes, robbing him of sight, and so when he launched the stones he had conjured up, they flew in random directions. The one stone that was headed for the human was easily avoided with a simple sidestep. The elf clawed at his eyes, trying to figure out why he could not see. The human just pointed to the ground and said, "Slip." The elf felt his feet slide out from under him, as if he was standing on ice. He fell over backward with a resounding thud.
"Why, you disrespectful maggot!" the elf screamed. "I will end this right now!"
And started to create a large semicircle blade that would cover the arena from side to side.
"Escape this, worm!"
the elf cried, and started to release the spell the direction he thought the human was. The human sighed and made a small pushing motion with his hands. The elf's hands dropped and landed on his knees just as the spell was launched. The blades neatly severed the elf's legs, and the elf cried out in shock and pain. The human walked over, flicked upwards, and suddenly the elf could see again. He saw the human standing over him.
"I surrender," he croaked. "Help me, and I will leave you and your family alone."
The human smiled grimly. "You threatened to rape my daughter and cast her aside. Why should I help you?" he asked. "Especially as elves have a reputation of never upholding their word. And finally, my power levels are not enough to staunch the bleeding, even if I had wanted to." The last thing the elf saw was the human making a small motion of cutting, and the elf felt the muscles and tendons of his wrists and elbows part ways, and realized that he could no longer control those limbs to cast magic. The human then turned and walked away, saying, It does not matter how powerful you are. If you don't know how to wield power in subtle ways, you will always lose to those who do.